Lovely to have you all. I hope you're a sizable number of very motivated people. I've been wanting to have a regenerating impact on society, the environment, and our economic systems ever since I became a mother, driven to fill the gap between what we know and how we live. As a journalist, I'm inquisitive by nature. And by nature I'm holistic. So my understanding of where we are and where we need to go is fueled by a constant dynamic of empathy, of knowing and feeling, a deep connection with nature and with others. Just give me a second. Olbel mi è saltato il mio. Sorry, just give me a second. I'm having a problem here. Solved problem. So that's why I'm here with you today, because I would like this to be a practical, highly interactive session. And I assume that you're already on a journey of change makers since you're part of this wonderful organization. So instead of going through actions that many of you already possibly practice, and then we will also have time together at the end of the session to actually dive into actions, I wanted to address the underlying element of attitude, the mindset, because whoever you hear speaking will always say, but we really do need a change in mindset. And that's what we need in order to scale the power of our good actions and accelerate the transition towards a sustainable future. So my teammate Olivia and I have created an alphabet of keywords. It's kind of a word cloud, guidelines that we will jumpstart you on, and then you can add to. At every letter, so it's an alphabet, please take note of keywords that you would like to add, and also prepare questions, because the second half of our time together will be dedicated to Q&A and reflections, and we will start with a quick poll. So please either photograph the QR code that you see on the screen or tap in the information. And you will have 45 seconds to write as many words as come to mind, and then we'll look at the word cloud together. So get ready, and when you are connected, we will start with the poll. Give you a few seconds.
Ma'am, I have a question. Sorry to interrupt.
Sure.
Thank you. Sorry, due to some connection problem, I've just joined. So what I have to do?
It's an interactive session. I've created an alphabet of keywords to address the underlying mindset that we need in order to scale our good actions. And we're going to start with a quick poll. So you see a QR code on the screen. Do they see the QR code? You see a QR code on the screen. You don't see it?
No, I just see poll.
Okay, you see poll. Okay, the QR, we don't see I don't see it either. It's coming. We see poll. Okay, no. Okay, so give us 1 second.
Yeah, I can see a little bit moment ago.
You saw the QR code a moment ago?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, give us a second, sorry. We thought we were clear of all problems, but we have this little glitch, which we will solve in a second. Okay, here you go. So you can take a photo of the QR code or punch in at slido.com the number that you see on the screen, 068842. And that will bring you to our first poll. And for every question, so you should see, but that's not the first question. Okay. Have you, wait, do we give them time to?
No, I wasn't able to answer.
Sorry, guys.
This worked before. We apologize.
We tested it a moment before connecting, but
Yeah, I could see that. No problem. Thank you.
You see it?
The QR code is
Oh,
not.
there's
Okay,
no
here we
question.
go. Now this is the right one. The other number, that was a slide for the second poll that we'll take at the end. So the number is at slido.com 715-852, or you photograph the QR code. We'll give you half a minute to join. And then we will time them right for each question. So 45 seconds. There you go. Perfect. Okay, so I'm happy to see that most of you are relaxed, excited, and happy. Some are tired. Join the club. Ready for the second question? Where are you on your journey as change makers? I can't hear the voice. Okay, so Asil says he can't hear the voice. Everyone else can hear well, I think. Asil, you might want to try and connect again. We're finished with this. Okay, great. So most of you are beginners on the journey. Okay, that's fine. Ready for the next question? How familiar are you with the 2030 agenda? And now on to the next one. How much does the 2030 agenda inspire your actions? Okay, and the last one. Which SDG do you feel most engaged with? Okay, so it's interesting. We have quite a diverse group of people, and some are at the beginning, some are already engaged, most are familiar with the agenda, some a bit less. And the two SDGs that you seem to focus on mostly are number 4 and number 13. The reason I've chosen to kind of work on the underlying attitude that we need is because it's something that's purposeful, whether you're at the beginning of a journey or whether you're way ahead on your journey. It's a matter of awakening our consciousness and understanding, especially in relation to SDG 13, right? How interconnected everything is. So let's get started with the alphabet. I've created, as I said, an alphabet of attitudes that are really important to practice always in order to be active, engaged change makers. So let's start with A. Every action counts. What we buy matters because it can affect our bodies. Think of products for personal hygiene or for cleaning the house. They can affect the environment. Think of the plastic problem. They have an effect on other people. Think of the supply chain of fast fashion. In everything we do, we can choose business as usual, or we can experiment a different way. The 2030 Agenda, the first holistic roadmap that clearly indicates how we cannot separate social, economic, and environmental development. It's so complex and so vast that to a beginner, it can seem vague. It's not. It's a world. Every SDG is a world, and everyone connects to the others. We don't need to protest to be activists. We need to put ourselves to service for a greater cause. Anthropocene, the impact of human activity has determined our era. Abundance, tap into it. Abundance is a state of nature. Take it as a starting point, not a goal. Awareness, essential in every aspect of our lives, to be practiced with curiosity. Attitude makes a difference. Have conversations with your peers. Get feedback on what works best, on what comes most natural. Art, the best medium to cross boundaries and stretch our imagination. Please have a notepad next to you and add words that you would like to have in this word cloud that are particularly meaningful to you. B. Biodiversity is the backbone of life. It's our biggest treasure. It needs to thrive for us to thrive. Yet the simple equation seems to have been lost. Scientists agree that the extinction rate is hundreds, even thousands times higher than the natural baseline rate. Monitoring the loss of biodiversity is very complex, and it is a weak point of the 2030 agenda. The best way to engage in protecting biodiversity is at the local level where you live. Sometimes we're in our heads so much that we don't take notice of the beauty we are immersed in. Seek it at least once a day. In time, it will reveal itself to you. It's a habit. Nature is so generous with beauty, but we're often so busy with doing that we forget to be. In a state of pure being, we remember who we are. We want to honor the planetary boundaries and stretch our own beyond habit to forge new pathways. C, We're all members of communities, from family, the most challenging, to friends, neighbors, and like-minded people all over the world. Communities are the primary hubs for change. Within communities, we can have an impact, getting others to share our good practices. Caring is a state of being. When we learn to take good care of ourselves, it becomes natural to care for others and for all forms of life. This reminds me of the safety instructions when we board a plane. Put the oxygen mask on yourself before you assist others. Caring is an act of love, and we need it more than ever. COP26. Let's make a big leap forward. Every single one of you, make your voices heard. Engage in the way that feels most comfortable, most fitting with your personality. Change makers. It's our mission. It's who we are. Circular, a mentality above all, and an economy that considers waste as a resource. It promotes repairing and reusing. Our current economies are mostly linear and expected to grow infinitely, which is impossible on our finite planet. D, we have to allow ourselves to dream the world we want. Our imagination is a powerful aid to overcome anxiety of being too small to make a difference. It's an act of courage, which we want to embrace. Take a moment to daydream every day. Make it visual. See yourself acting in the world you want. Make it genuine, not an obligation. Data. Alone it's sterile. Use it to understand, but then put it into context. Dialogue is essential. We need to communicate how we feel and be active listeners. Diet. What we eat makes a difference, not only for our health, but for our planet. More plants, less meats, more fruit, less refined sugars, more whole grains, overall, more awareness. E, the mechanism of empathy, or mirror mechanism, was discovered by the Italian neuroscientist Giacomo Rizzolatti and his team at the University of Parma. What he proved is that our brains are wired to feel with others. So when we see an action performed, for example, you're watching someone bite into a piece of chocolate, our brains react as if we were performing that action. So practice it and explore your empathic drive when you perform acts of kindness, love, and respect. Think that those around you are resonating with you. It's quite a lovely dynamic. Empower yourselves, and in time, you will empower others. We know everything it takes, but to evolve, we need to take action. We're part of a tiny ecosystem. Honor the abundance of life. How much energy do we need to live well? How much energy is dispersed or wasted? Think about our energy level and the amount of energy that we produce to operate our activities. And let's remind ourselves of the original meaning of the word economy. From Greek, oikos, which means home, and nomos, which means divide and share. Elders are wise, experienced, and have a lot to teach. You need them, they need you. F, if we don't believe we won't succeed in overcoming our grand challenges, we won't go far. Faith takes many different forms. Be faithful to what has meaning to you. Fun is part of the game. When I began integrating sustainable solutions in my daily life, I took it as a creative exercise, and it might sound silly, but I do have fun recycling, reducing waste, reusing anything that can still have a purpose, saving water, choosing quality local food. It goes for anything. Fulfillment is, first of all, a state of being, though we often relate it to material abundance. Unfortunately, many people who have material and economic resources are not fulfilled. Focus on what really needs your attention. And more than ever, focusing is a big challenge. Shall we call it a discipline? I think so. Embrace it. Free, what we want to be, what we want the world to be, what we need to watch out for, because many things that seem free have an impact. G, find what genuinely interests you. Find your genuine way of carrying it through and expressing yourself. Authenticity travels far, and when you manifest it, you're aligning your knowledge and your feeling, your personal purpose and our collective mission. Growth is intended as a process of maturity. It's a qualitative trait. Then it becomes quantitative when our good actions scale. Greenwashing, a threat, and we need to learn how to detect it. We need to learn how to discern authentic players in sustainable development from the opportunists. Gut, it's our second brain. Tap into your gut all the time. Often the answers are there. Gap between what we know and how we live. We are all called to fill the gaps. Gratitude, practicing it throughout our days opens us to honoring what we have instead of obsessing with what we don't have. Goals, very important to have them, meet them, set new ones, like any good workout or diet. H, we are part of a sophisticated interdependent system that requires a holistic mentality to be understood and restored. Once you understand it and feel it, it feeds into what you do. An example, I recently did a story on bees for the World Biodiversity Day, and I learned that they're increasingly malnourished because the nectar in the flowers is less rich in nutrients. So their immune system is lower. And the result of that, though, is impoverished soil. The 2030 Agenda is holistic because it emphasizes how social, economic, and environmental values and development are inseparable. Home, it's our planet. Let's practice a sense of belonging. Human, as Rag and Bone Man sings, we're only human after all. Let's humbly embrace our vast potential and our weaknesses. We have much more in common than we think. So let's communicate, let's share, face to face, ideally unfiltered by screens. Happiness is the most noble of pursuits. It's a state of being. I, positive impact, what we strive for. Negative impact, what we're trying to contrast and repair. Going back to never feeling too small to make a difference, think of Greta Thunberg or her predecessor, Severin Suzuki, who at 15 had addressed the world leaders at the climate conference in Rio in 1992. While sharing is important, favor human interaction to assess your impact. Social media, yes, can increase our reach, but it does have an environmental impact. 4% of greenhouse gases are caused by digital communication. Our awareness can help us measure the power of impact. Inquisitive, be curious, always ask endless questions to yourself and to others. Innovate, every day is an opportunity to do something differently. Tap into the innovator in you. Intelligence, honor it in all forms. Life is vastly intelligent. Explore it, learn about how intelligent animals are, plants are. It's quite humbling. And also many people have forms of intelligence that want to be recognized. All forms of life are interdependent and interconnected. It's pure magic. But we need to understand it because undoing the mess makes it obviously much more complicated. Indigenous culture is vital and it harbors millennia of knowledge and tradition. Explore the indigenous culture that is most fascinating to you or that is closest to your heritage. J, there's an old saying, focus on the journey and not the destination. We want to set our goals and cast our intention to meet them successfully, but then we want to be fully present in every moment. Because along our journeys, when we're open and aware, many unforeseen opportunities manifest. Progress is never linear. Allow yourselves to make mistakes. They always teach us something. K, how to unlock our full potential and turn the key is the main pillar of our lifelong journeys. Key is also finding the actions that can unlock change. Focusing on key drivers. Knowledge is the essential K word. Our long-term goal to evolve from the age of information to the age of knowledge. L. In 1972, a group of scientists and leaders founded the Club of Rome to investigate the limits of growth. A report was published and everything we're living was foreseen then. So how can we have infinite growth on a finite planet? Our current situation is exposing our difficulty as humans to respect long-term goals. But hopefully that's changing. Circling back, dream the world you want in 30 years. The date 2050 is in our collective consciousness. So let's manifest the future we want and that you all deserve. Love is what we need most. Learn. Never before have humans had more access to information. Learning is a lifelong journey. Life, embrace it fully. Though we live in an abundant universe, we have broken nature's cycles of regeneration, and accepting our limits is actually our biggest key to freedom. M. We live in an increasingly polarized world, but we know that a key ingredient to evolve is to break down silos of knowledge. We have to practice the art of mediation, finding the middle ground between our ideas and opinions and those of others. Another relevant M is meditate. It sounds lofty, but it's very simple. It means give your mind a rest, connect to the source, be it the universe, Mother Earth, or any God you might believe in. Monitor patterns of growth, improvement, weaknesses that deserve our attention. Manifest your ideas, your concerns, your intentions, your dreams, and think that the world needs you. N, nature. Every element, earth, air, fire, water, ether, are in us and around us. It might seem obvious, but we do often forget. The region most affected by the coronavirus in Italy was the Pianura Padana, where the air is most polluted. Only a year later, thanks to a number of researches that proved the relation between air pollution and the health of our lungs, did this information seep in. Despite all this, our cities are still far too polluted for our own good. Nature is a world to discover and understand. Oh, we have one planet for now. If you could leave planet Earth and go to Mars, would you? I find this place quite special, and I feel one with nature. Oceans. Today is World Ocean Day, by the way. They're our biggest climate regulators, but because they belong to us all, they're not territorial except for a few miles from the coastlines. We trash them and overexploit them. Our daily choices do have an impact on our oceans. This is also the decade of the oceans. There is so much to learn. UNESCO has just launched a vast program with contents for people all ages. Opportunities, seek them and create them. P, people, planet, and prosperity is a trio that cannot be separated. Passion, what drives our efforts, gives power to our actions. Find your passion and make it your engine. Progress is a word that needs to regain its original meaning. Q, we're inundated by information. It can be numbing, and beneath many truths, there are many information channels that try to push upon us maybe truths that we might want to question. There is great need for questions, and it's one way of unwrapping the complexity. Let's not settle for the easy answer. Get into the habit of noting a question or two a day. Use them to probe beneath the surface. Quality is to prefer over quantity always in everything, from what we wear to what we eat and what we use. R, finding the right questions to ask requires reflection. Again, in the holistic sense, think, bring thoughts to the level of feeling, check in with your tummy. Usually our gut instincts are subjected to our rational minds, but that's not the way we want to do it. We want to seek greater balance between our rational thought and our instincts. Relate to our inner and outer worlds constantly. Relate to others and to nature. Relationships are our biggest opportunities and our biggest challenges. Resilience is a term that comes from the textile industry. It indicates the quality to bounce back without losing your original form. And it really is the one action that we need to practice all the time. We need to adapt to change. It's a quality that will be essential moving into the future. Roadmap, it can be personal and collective to embark on our journeys. Be regenerative in every possible way. Regenerate yourself first, and then you will be very regenerating for others. Responsible choices and behaviors today will bear fruits tomorrow. S. Altruism expresses itself in solidarity for those who are less fortunate and bear the consequences of our actions. So get involved. Show someone near or far that you care, that you feel solidarity. Systemic change is what needs to kick in fast. We know all the solutions, but they need a framework, a system to give them power. Sustainable development and SDGs, they're just words and acronyms without our active involvement. They become powerful when we get involved and set our own roadmap. Scarcity, we live in a world of abundance, but the pressure we have put on our ecosystem has generated scarcity of natural resources. In a systemic mindset, what we abuse of creates scarcity elsewhere. Scale, what we need to reach a turning point, a positive one, of course. Spaceship, our planet is like a spaceship. It has finite resources. So what are the 10 things that you would bring into space? T, together we can. Join like-minded people, organizations, associations, clubs, circles, explore the power of critical mass. Everything is constantly in a state of transformation. Think of what happens every instant in our body. The oxygen that nourishes our blood, millions of microbes break down nutrients in our guts and deliver those nutrients where we need them. Let's mime the laws of nature and set off on every new day invoking the power of transformation. It's so much fun to be different than we were yesterday. Transition, the era we're in, ecological, technological, our journey from where we are to where we want to go. We have to remember that there are incremental steps that we need to take in order to meet our higher goals. You, understanding at every level of your being. V, we're all vulnerable. In today's society, we're taught to be strong, invincible, but it's quite the contrary. When we learn to manifest our vulnerabilities, we open up an important channel for mutual understanding and collaboration. When we embrace our vulnerability, we learn to ask for help, which is so much more humble than expecting others to know that we need help. W, witnessing the efforts of change makers and those who struggle fuels our motivation to play our part in the regenerative movement. X, xenobiotic. It means that a chemical or a substance that is foreign to an organism or a biological system. It indicates, therefore, many of the substances we use every day, from the chemicals circling back to the beginning that we use in our homes, on our bodies, and that make up many of the things we use. Think of plastic. Familiarizing with xenobiotic materials can help us avoid them. Y, youth, you. 50% of the global population is under 30. You are a powerhouse, and us adults apologize for the mess we're in. With our experience and your vision, we shall overcome. Z, zero emissions. The goal for 2050, our target every day, because we need those baby steps to get there. And we need to demand that industries and government create infrastructure and regulations to accelerate our transition to zero emissions. So this journey is circular, not linear. Back to A, actions. If you want stimulus on that front and you want to be in good company, download the app Act Now, adopted by the UN for the global campaign. It was designed by a young group of Italians. And it's a really good way to test the power of your actions, to understand who's doing what. Some of the actions are simple, but they're an important reminder. And what we need to do is just practice them. Now we're going to have another quick poll and then your questions. So please, because we've decided to leave about 15 minutes for interaction, please ask anything that is in your mind and in your heart. Okay, so now what you want to do is go to the QR code that you should see on the screen. Not there yet. And meanwhile, while we wait for the QR code to come up, you know, the example of the two, it started with two people and now it's a larger group, but the two people who designed the Act Now app went to New York for during the week of the last General Assembly in 2019, and they went to all the meetings that they could, and they proposed what they had in mind, and one person to the other, to the other, to the other, led them on a journey, and they ended up being selected for the app that, you know, they had developed. And it was obviously a source of huge satisfaction to be able to put their app to the world and have a global population interacting with it. And, you know, that could be any of you. You just need to be bold and believe in what you know how to do. So I think by now we should have, yes, we have the QR code up. So if you photograph that, we have a second set of questions, and then we will comment them together and interact. So how do you connect with nature is the first question. Again, any word. Okay. Okay, I think we're almost there. A few more seconds. Okay, on to the next question. How do you feel after this, the first part of this session? You can be totally frank and use as many nice answers you'd like. Oh, this is so nice. Okay, on to the next. What is your biggest question, which you can also then address now, but in general, if there's something that you really can't get your head around, that you don't understand about this bizarre world we live in? Okay, we can go back to this one, right? Okay, so we have one more and then we'll go back to this because I think it's a good way to start giving some answers. Now, what words would you like to add to the alphabet that we just ran through? Anything that came to mind while we were going through it? Great addition, networking. Unique, of course. Of course, education, awareness. This is perfect because of course I could have gone on for days writing that alphabet, but I really wanted it to be a trigger, a starting point for you guys. Wonderful. Yes, sacrifices. We do need to make those, don't we? Self-education, fundamental. Okay, we'll go back to this also in a moment. Next question. No more questions, I'm sorry. Okay, so how would you like to proceed? Does I know that there was a suggestion to write questions in the chat, but I think you can just raise your hands or open your mic and shoot your questions. Questions, comments, whatever. I'll give you some seconds, and if no one steps in with a question, we can start commenting your biggest question, the ones that you wrote in the poll. Okay, I'll give you a few more seconds. Nobody wants to break the ice?
Yusuf has a question. You can go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So I would like to first thank you for this wonderful session. And I have a question. So my question is, since you know that all the countries don't have the same problems concerning the ecology, so do you think that we can find a shared solution for all the countries? Is it possible?
Well, that's the dream of the 2030 agenda, isn't it? We've studied it in depth and there's a few criticalities. One is it was undersigned by the 193 countries. Sadly, though, not everyone reports their data. So often we take partial data sets as total data sets. We know that there are some countries that in specific sub-Saharan Africa and parts of Asia that are much more penalized by, and not to say all the islands as well, by the effects of climate change, for example. There has been talk for quite some time about the more so-called developed countries taking responsibility and supporting those countries in need. And that was President Obama's biggest contribution during COP21. The sad thing is that it takes quite a long time to implement these solutions that can have a global impact. So I think that there's many regenerative practices, even think of agriculture in many countries. Just yesterday, I was talking to someone who, for example, was saying how in the country he lives in, and we're talking about Holland, so we're not even talking about one of the countries that are, more impacted by climate change. And this I know is true for many African countries as well. They export most of their goods, the ones that really are most precious and of best quality, are put on the global market. And that leaves them with very little. So some of these actions need to be reviewed at the level of local government. But, let's put all our hopes in the upcoming COP26, where certainly this will need to be addressed. There are wonderful stories about communities that are overcoming hardship by regenerating in their own place, in their own community. So, power to that, and hope for the global meeting that will happen in November. And it's really important that all youth participate as much as possible. Bring your questions to the world leaders who will be making decisions. I don't know, Youssef, if that answers your question, but
It does. It doesn't
yeah.
sound.
Thank you. Where are you from?
I'm from Morocco.
From Morocco. Wonderful. Well, you live in a beautiful country. And, I'll tell you something, that in terms of quality education, the SSDN, the Sustainable Solutions Development Network, that is one of the many UN organizations, did a focus on the mission 4.7, which is quality education on sustainable development. And they took an example of educational practices in Morocco as a taste of something that was incredibly well performed. If I find the name of the university that was mentioned, I will maybe through the organizers of this event send it to you. Anyone else?
I had more of like a comment than a question, but I'm actually based in the Netherlands at the moment. I'm at the university here. And what you said about exporting, I think really connects to one of the questions that's on the screen right now. Like, the Netherlands is, by my understanding, prioritizing business, the economy. They want to, keep the economy going through COVID, but they are putting that at the expense of people, which is, it's like an interesting thought, because you can't really have one over the other. It's expensive to have people live, but also you want to make sure that people are still doing well. So I don't know, it was kind of interesting that you brought that up, because that is something we discuss quite a lot at my university, is like the difference, what do you want to prioritize and what comes first, the chicken or the egg?
I made that example because it really surprised me. And on top of that, it's funny, they came with a bouquet of flowers. And, we have so many local beautiful flowers right now that it was a wonderful thought, but every single flower in that bouquet had traveled far too many miles. So, that's a prime industry in your country. But I think every country, I moderated a forum for the UN on sustainable trade a few years ago, and there were coffee producers, for example, who were complaining about the fact that they stress their ecosystem to export as much coffee as possible, and then they're ridding themselves of something that is part of their culture as well. How to set priorities? Well, again, I mentioned Severin Suzuki because I connected with her about, at this point, almost 10 years ago, time flies, but to interview her, to know what she had done with her life. She was a kid who spoke to the world leaders. And if you are not familiar with her talk, you should go look for it online, because it's really interesting to hear in comparison to Greta's voice. But she, after talking to the world, decided to study biology and to go back, she's Canadian, to go back to the Inuit populations in the north of her country and monitor the loss of biodiversity through the experience of elders. So that's just to say that we can monitor change at a local community, and we can set our priorities at a local community. I think that we know that the current economic paradigm has to shift. There's very interesting examples, Bhutan with its gross national happiness index. We can't keep on obsessing with an infinite growth on a finite planet, right? So GDP is really something that it's a metric that there's been great attempts by Nobel Prize winners and economists all over the world to overcome that. but globally, there is great resistance on behalf of countries to give it up. So, I think that I would start local and set your priorities there, and then hopefully get those priorities to scale. Another question?
We have one from Taskimal.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Taskinul. I'm from Bangladesh. And first of all, I'd like to give many thanks to you for this wonderful session. My question is regarding about political propaganda regards climate change issues, especially in this part where I live. There's a highest rate of corruption and political crush that contribute to climate changing factors. And we usually observe a casualty amongst leaders, local leaders and other even government leaders also. Likewise, when we youth are trying to reach out to politicians or social leaders, their notions are just like beat around the bushes. They remain active when there's an air of protest, but when it fades out, they go back to their own traditions. Though their standout may give a temporary solutions, but it's just like a small leap towards a big goal, despite of having maximum efforts from our side. So in this position, what we can do else?
Well, I'll share a window of possibility, because you know how much Italy is I mean, you know how much the mafia is part of the Italian social structure, right? And that seems something impossible to go against. Well, there's a group of young activists, I would say, who had the courage to develop a network of people who it's called addio pizzo. Addio pizzo means that you're not accepting that you have to pay in order to be protected, right? And they created a circuit of stores who put this emblem on their door. And they, it's a huge act of courage. But as the community grows, they're kind of protected by the fact that they're so openly taking a position, right? And they do generate an economy and people who go and buy in those shops because they're actually supporting that mentality. Going against the system is always scary. You feel like you're vastly vulnerable. Unfortunately, corruption has a hold on the biggest part of society because we're obsessed with material abundance and we're totally trashing the natural abundance, which is what we live upon. So, hopefully you'll be able to find a voice and a way to demand that actions and decisions and provisions be long-term and not short-term. And, be aware, I was talking about the impact of the blockchain and digital currencies with a big expert the other day. And he was saying, well, in countries where there's a lot of renewable energy produced, the servers are powered by renewable energy. It's often in corrupt countries where you are sold cheap, polluting energy because they're trying to keep, their stream and their flow of revenues coming, and they're blocking the expansion of renewable energy. So it's a matter of finding the way in, but, considering your passion and your engagement, I'm sure you'll find your voice. But of course, it's tough. I feel for you. And we all, in one way or another, deal with that, unfortunately. Okay, next question.
Next question is from Sophia. Sophia, if you can ask your question.
Hi, I really like the webinar. Thank you for your time. And I have a question. What solutions do you recommend to get rid of garbage in a river? In my community, exists of that problematic, and it's worrying because it's not only affect the environment, but also society, since it leads to multiple diseases for the lack of sanitation.
Well, there's a group of young people who have designed nets that collect the trash from the rivers and intercept them before they then enter the seas. There are some design solutions, that is to say, but again, we need to radically change our habits. And while there's big debate on mono-use plastics, Europe is trying to introduce a law where they're fully banned. Other people are resisting because Italy is one of the biggest producers in the world of plastic packaging. It's again a transition. Anyone who can afford to avoid plastic packaging should, and give the good example and use your problem as proof of the fact that it just cannot continue to scale. We need to often, problems can be taken as an incentive to really scale the solutions, because yes, it's a huge problem, not only when they're in the rivers, which is already dramatic, but then when they enter the seas. And then you can certainly try and put pressure on your municipality. I mean, we have all the technology to recycle. It just needs to be implemented fast.
Thank you.
The next question is from Hiraf, if I pronounced your name wrong.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank you for the very beautiful and presentation filled with very deliberate infographics and all. My question was that how can we affect the climate change by not hampering the industrial progress and the industry? Because here in India, the whole climate movement has been totally hijacked by the communists, and their only aim is to close down the industry or two and then go dormant. So here we so without acting like a bear, so down with that and down with this, how can we produce possible outcomes without hampering the industrial and social development? Thank you.
Well, that's a question that we have a new minister for ecological transition, and that question is put on his table, I would say, pretty much one day yes and one day no. We have to understand that we are in a transition. What needs to be done is for industries to take responsibility and to understand that we need to wean ourselves off what is most negative on the environment and start introducing the replacement. It can't be abrupt, because exactly on our minister Roberto Cingolani commented the day before yesterday, the choice of the European Union to totally ban single-use plastics. And he said, well, we need to have a transition phase, because obviously if you shut those industries down from one day to the next, you have many people, millions of people laid off from their jobs. So what needs to happen? Organizations that can be governmental at the local level, at the national level, but also coalitions of industry need to start training programs so the people who will be out of an old job can then be prepared to enter the new workplace. And, I know that it seems like an impossible quest, but we have to empower ourselves and understand that, we will have to figure out a solution. And that's why, again, COP is so important, because the 2030 agenda, which, if you look at the progress of every single SDG, is not going to get us by the end of the decade to the goals that we need to meet to make the jump to 2050. We need to talk real. And I think that the biggest voice comes from you. Remember that you are voters and that you are the future. So any politician who has any bit of, forethought will understand that if they fail you, they're failing themselves. I hope that helps.
Hi, everyone. Before we continue, I'd like to ask everyone if they don't mind to please turn on their cameras so we can take a group picture.
Okay, sorry, go.
So we're also over time, and if you would like to stay and answer more questions, it would be a pleasure.
I'll stay for Sorry, just 1 second. Oh, can you see if, because I'm waiting for someone. Okay, so I'll take a few more gladly, and then, you know, let's connect on, I don't know, I'm not a big fan of Facebook. I use it for work. I use LinkedIn much more. So, you know, I'm happy to continue this conversation with you. And, you know, you have the word cloud, be great to add it. Great to be able to address these big questions that you've put on the chat. So let's consider this a starting point and not an end point, but I will happily take a few more questions, and then just say, as we do in Italy, arrivederci, which means I will see you again.
Awesome, perfect. So let's take a group picture first, and then we can go ahead and continue on with the questions. So everyone, let's smile for the camera, I guess.
Everybody look happy to be here. 1, 2, 3. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, how can we contact? So there's our last slide with the contacts that I will, is there a burning question that you have, or because I actually have someone waiting for me. So I can take one last burning question if there is, and otherwise we will share our contacts. Feel free to write, engage, interact, and very happy to be helpful for, you know, for your evolution on your journey as change makers.
Thank you everyone for joining today, and thank you for Christine for joining this session and giving a wonderful, wonderful presentation. Before we leave, I'd like to add to the chat box a list of 100 deeds that you can do to help, I guess, climate change and everything. And also, if you would like to submit your own deeds, the second link is the way to do it. Thank you. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, and we'll copy your links and we will engage again soon. I'm glad it was a constructive session for you, and I look forward to seeing you again soon. All my best to you.
Bye, everyone. You're free to leave.
Thank you.